Welcome to Slash Forward. In this video, we're going to take a tour of some of the best scenes of surreal violence offered up by The Cell. Imagine you were abducted and imprisoned in a strange, isolated torture chamber. You might not feel encouraged to learn you only have about 40 hours to live, but that might be manageable. But what if your abductor then went into a permanent coma? There wouldn't be many options. That is, unless the authorities enlisted the help of J-Lo and her fantastic mind exploration machine. We're going to check out what she's up to with this dang thing as we open on a figure in white, traversing a desert landscape on a magnificent steed. The rider parks her noble companion and begins a long trek along the edge of a massive dune. She eventually arrives at a desiccated oasis where a young boy has been anticipating her appearance. This is, we come to learn, a world of Edward's making, and they were supposed to be sailing today, but Ed's mind holes are haunted by the boogeyman, which makes you boy run wild. With no progress to be made here, Catherine diddles her thumb web and begins to groggily phase back into reality. She uses an experimental deprivation suit to connect with and enter young Edward's mind to try to fix his personality from the inside and, hopefully, bring him out of his coma. The facility's wealthy benefactors, Eddie's parents, then arrive to discuss future plans. After entrusting the care of their son for a long period of time, there has been no demonstrable progress in his condition, or any proof that the procedure even works. So they intend to transfer Edward to an actual hospital for further care. While Catherine pleads her case, we watch an old truck pull up to an abandoned silo. Abandoned save for Carl the sicko's specimen, the spasming of whom puts him into a state of distress. When that's all done, Carl loads his toolbox with some fresh remains to take to market and begins the arduous process of cleaning the body to his satisfaction. Meanwhile, we discover that they have squeezed out 6 more months of experimentation. Catherine's hope is that she can reverse the feed and have Edward come into her mind so she can show him what kind of beauty and healing is possible. However, Dr. Kent feels this is pushing it too far and puts both of them at great risk of irreversible trauma. Back at home, she pores over her notes and tries to get deeper into Edward's psyche. And pantsless, which is how she does her best thinking. When she's ready to pack it in, she relaxes in her bed and observes her duvet transmogrify into the sands of Agrabah, an indication that the job is beginning to wear thin her tether to reality. Since everyone gets ready for bed in their own way, we then transition to Carl, who is participating in one of the most complex sexual perversions possible. He hangs himself from hooks over a dead body and seeks climax while a video feed nearby shows another woman drowning. Trains. The next morning finds some G-men hanging out on a bridge with a familiar set of tire tracks and a scuff of paint on the wall. The most recent body dump is victim 7, as far as they know. They're very familiar with what old Carl's been up to after the fact. The prerequisites involve much research and preparation. At that moment, he is aghast as his ideal woman shares familiarity with another man. It's enough to give you a bout of the brain burn. Meanwhile, the recent scene's full of familiar sights and smells, except the coroner's report has one additional detail this time. A canine hair, but not a normal hair. This one is wrought with hypomelanosis from a rare albino dog that matches the sterile white aesthetic of his victims. Later on, we see our prior peepstress, Julia, enter a dank dark parking garage with her bear spray at the ready. No need for alarm, however, as she makes it to her car. Unfortunately, when she is made to believe she backed over the dog sleeping under her tire, she's taken off guard and overwhelmed with a blitz attack. Back at the field office, Novak makes it clear that he lives for this shit before heading to the debriefing room to delegate the tasks of looking for any German Shepherd breeders that may have sold an albino and scour Ford dealers to seek a match to the tires and paint. Also, the heat is on as well because they are aware of Julia's disappearance and the shortened intervals between victims indicate their perp is losing control. The task force is absolutely full of excellent researchers with keen eyes for detail because they barely get a few bits of info from Julia's family before the call comes in to reveal they found a breeder who sold an albino pup a few years back. The buyer, Carl Starger, also has a Ford pickup of the color they desire registered in his name. They waste no time and soon hit the tarmac at their destination, where they are whisked away to the house where SWAT is keeping watch on things. Inside, Carl's just taking a relaxing bath when he gets another bout of the brain flames. He stumbles around to see if he can find some aspirin while they get the word outside to go ahead and perform a soft breach. They pound in and clear the house, eventually finding their suspect comatose on the kitchen floor. Aw man, they didn't get to use their various devices on him. That's the best part of the job. In further discouraging news, Julia is not in the house, so they make do with what they have and learn about his various interests and hobbies down in his man cave. An old VHS plays a home movie that reveals his method of murder, which we come to see, in an unfortunate turn for Julia, is on an automated system, leaving her with limited time. As they work to figure out how to piece this puzzle, the doctor informs them that Carl has a schizophrenia-related brain condition that made him a ticking time bomb, and he just popped off. This has put him into a coma where he will likely be permanently stuck in a dreamlike state. So not good in terms of questioning. No matter how hard they want to find Julia, he's just not coming back. Unless...
What?
Oh, you'll see. We assume they said, before lifelining his little ass over to the Institute. They quickly debrief on the timing aspect and stakes involved in their current situation. The doctors have board approval and have signed off on proceeding into Carl's mind. That leaves everything up to Catherine as the one taking the risk. Novak's presumption is that Carl was out of control and getting sloppy because he wanted to get caught, so they may be able to pull a confession. Because of that, and because Catherine has a huge chip on her shoulder about proving the efficacy of the treatment, she reluctantly agrees to give it the old college effort. With no time at all to spare, they boot up the old DOS prompt and hit the run command as the subjects have their brains and bodies prepped. They're soon floating in the air and entering the disgusting hellscape of their own minds. After a disorienting Escher-style entrance to the landscape, Catherine removes her psychology shroud and begins the observations. Quite frankly, it's getting all sorts of surreal up in here. She eventually catches up with Carl in the horse room and tries to show him how gentle she is. But her efforts are interrupted when a countdown begins to signal the daily horse vivisection, which causes him to run off. Catherine next enters the victim display room and is totally comfortable flipping levers and winding up all the various automated doll exhibits. Each of them offers up their own metaphor and are so visually alluring that she doesn't even see the Amazonian approaching on her 6 until it's too late. She is rendered unconscious from inside her state of unconsciousness and deposited at the feet of the master, purple-draped Carl. She pulls the old, uh-oh, he's right behind me, isn't he? And finds he's really just curious about one thing.
Where you come from?
The boys are alerted to Catherine's return. They're told she went dangerously deep into his world. If her own mind becomes convinced his world is real, it could react to it as though it were. So they need to be careful, but they are also really pressed for time. This is driven home for us only as we circle back to the silo and see Julia get her first splashdown in her cell. As Catherine decompresses, she wonders if Carl is too far gone, lost in a fantasy kingdom of his creation. After some conversation and convincing, she eventually concludes that since his child side is still in there and reachable, she may be able to make meaningful contact and draw out some information. Now they have one more chance in a very limited window of time to make this work. They try to gain an advantage by initiating his nostalgic side through Valentine giving him some soothing licks before Catherine dives back in. Unfortunately, it seems a power outage delays their start. Catherine is sent to check the circuits, but when she gets there, she looks back to discover that her brain's playing tricks on her. Or Carl's brain, dangerously blurring the line and risking her becoming ensnared in a glass case of emotion. She breaks free of this and manages to float down with the greatest of ease. And their trick worked out as she finds Valentine in here and has him lead her to Carl. At his boyhood home, she endears herself to him by helping with his chores and gifting him a little summoning trinket. But when things take a turn, she is tucked away in the pantry to save her from the brunt of his father's abusive behavior. She wants to help, but is standing in eels, so can only observe from a distance. Eventually, her closet turns into the studio apartment where he sloppily tried to figure out his ideal methodology with his first victim. The schizophrenic virus that ails him is usually instigated by some sort of water trauma, and he thinks back to his violent baptism where Daddy tried to hold him under until he met God. This was the first time he heard the voice. Excited by this progress, she jumps the gun a little on expressing empathy, which his body rejects. In this moment of vulnerability, she fumbles and asks him directly about Julia's whereabouts.
No names.
But he doesn't like names, so he withdraws into the darkness. When he emerges, it is sudden and startling, and he has taken on one of his devil forms. He cannot be reasoned with and quickly makes her one of his ladies. This starts setting off all kinds of alarms outside, but if they pull her out without her expecting it, it could cause some serious damage and put her in shock. They could utilize their third unit, but they're short on technicians to man the control center. But maybe Novak could get suited up? They are hesitant, but as he points out, training didn't save her, so what does it matter if he's an ignorant bitch? There are basically 2 steps to make this work. Dress up like a Twizzler, and remember that nothing that happens is real. The hard part is mainly the anticipation of what's to come. But soon he is soothed into a relaxed state by the grand cosmic fractal butthole, welcoming him into this new universe. As he tries to get his bearings, there's a really persistent and annoying light reflecting in his eyeball. It ends up being Carl summoning him to Catherine's location. He tries to free her, but honestly, she appears to be doing well for herself. She's all dripped out and aroused, but this proves to only be a distraction to allow Carl to surprise him with a velvet sack. When Novak wakes up, he's laid out on an ornate bed where he begins to scream silently while Carl explores his insides a little. He manages to dig out a loose end that he attaches to a golden rotisserie, which he then begins to crank. Feeling a bit flustered, Novak attempts to recall the things he read in Catherine's file so he can try to leverage some deep, dark memories to pull her out of her trance. And she does eventually save them by impaling their captor. After they snap out of it, it's just baby Carl now, bloody and in a room with Julia, although he doesn't know where this place is. Novak sees a familiar symbol and cracks the code. Despite her protestations, he pulls them both out suddenly, leaving young Carl with Devil Carl and his mouth full of chiclet teeth. He hops up quickly and calls the other agents, who are just sitting around waiting for their lunch to be delivered. Once Cole arrives in the basement, per Novak's instruction, he has him find the symbol and put together a dossier on the history of that machine. The agents then head for the helipad before being medically cleared, prompting Dr. Kent to run off and see if she can give him a physical before he goes. Now, with only Henry to look over things, Catherine very easily confounds him and ends up locked in the room alone. She takes control from the inside and reverses the feed so she can try to save young Carl. In her mind, she's kind of feeling herself, so she appears as Mother Christmas to help show him what kind of beauty is possible in the world, and he cowers before the awful goodness of her grace. He eventually requests to stay here forever, but this isn't possible. In the alternative, he seeks to be hooked up with a mercy killing. She refuses to do so, but it's somewhat irrelevant because bad Carl always finds him and spoils the mood, like a snake in the grass. Back out in society, they track the machine's origin and confirm that Carl was hired to seal off the facility when the owner went bankrupt. Instead, he turned it into his secret playscape. Now, it's a battle for survival on multiple fronts. Julia tries to hang in there while Catherine demonstrates what the rules are when you step into her world. She pummels the absolute foo-pucky out of him. And since they are inextricably linked, ends up giving him that mercy killing he was looking for. Back at the silo, Novak is coming up empty until he follows the conduit from an active Jenny rumbling nearby and finds it leads to a trap door. While Catherine provides comfort in the final moments of life for the boys she couldn't save, Novak ventures into the darkness to find Julia. She's up in the corner taking in some oxygen from a pipe she busted open. He gets her to back up so he can bust. Carl gets dipped under and they all receive a purifying cleanse of sorts, and then mutually cry it out. In the denouement, we get a Kaiser Soze style wrap-up that shows where all of Carl's best ideas came from. Catherine arrives to see if she can get a peek inside his home because she wants to know better the man she killed and see if maybe he has some extra dog food lying around. We learn that she's going to try reversing the stream with Edward and that Novak only has vague recollections of what happened while he was inside. So they get their closure and we go out seeing that she's able to show Edward what's possible if he just works hard and puts his mind to it. And that's really the best moral we could ask for. Plus, the journey this story took us on is much more interesting and desirable than what we would get from your typical rise and grind influencer. If you're looking for another dank, creepy, brutal mindbender, check out this video. And now that we're here, I want to congratulate you for making it to the end of the video and affirm that you are a very special person because of it. If you enjoyed the video, I would love for you to become part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.